Let's get started. Starting in... Oh, we're live. We're live. Okay, for the three people that joined us earlier, that was just a test stream. This is the proper stream now. This is the real deal. I was just yeah. I was just talking about the test stream that we was doing, where it's like 52 seconds long, and it was just us like fucking around. Well, I guess we could do you as well. I mean, I well. One. Yeah. Yeah. I just saying like I'm just saying the chat. It's all good in the hood. So, sorry, they're asking for super chat options. I'm not. I'm not. We're not advanced. We're not to that advanced stage yet. We've only just started. We are noobs. We are complete noobs at this. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something. I appreciate it, but I think that's something for a later time when we've kind of branched out a bit more. I don't think we're that deserving at the minute. We're just kind of we're still pretty small channels. I'm not saying we are. I mean, we can try to like keep going as best as we can, but we're just we're only triple digits strong, and we could be here today, gone tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. But you know what I mean? Yeah, 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 yeah. So this is going to sound really silly. When I was 10, 11 ish, I was a 2012 believer. I, I believed in all of this stuff about Nibiru and whatnot, and it's kind of unrelated to the topic, but it's just I can't pronounce it. Yeah. then the, well, yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah, they made a really they kind of made a subpar movie about it. You know, it was like and you had this about, but it was about some kind of rapture and the Mayan calendar and people essentially. There was these random earthquakes coming out of nowhere for no reason in that movie, and it wasn't even December the 21st yet. It was just so. But I'm getting sidetracked. But in terms of my serious journey, I kind of started off in my teen years as I guess it kind of started with my transition from just being some bog standard Christian to from going from that to atheism. I went to a religious school, not because my parents were religious or anything like that, but because they had a special needs unit for disabled pupils who needed support in their learning, and so that was the plan for me to go there from the very beginning, and it was a good school, minus all of the preachy nonsense. It was pretty good in the support they gave, but so my qualms with religion kind of coincided with like my pursuit for liberty and stuff like that. So I became sort of a liberal, if you will. I was like, I don't want like religion. Religion's too restrictive and stuff like that. I prefer to be a liberal atheist type, as a teenager and stuff like that. Mm, well, I wasn't even I wasn't even thinking about RBEs at the time. I was just like, I think all these, I don't like all these arbitrary restrictions about, all this stuff is like bad and icky and all that kind of stuff because religion says so. But it, you know, I through my schooling, through being exposed to more religion than usual and being exposed to its contradictions and its tendencies, I kind of saw through that, and that's kind of how I became an atheist liberal type as I went into my teens. Then, it's kind of on a kind of a bit of a personal note, I was on the receiving end of bullying for a few years in that school from certain individuals. And at the same time, this is around the time when you would hear on the news every day about these Islamic terrorism like groups like growing in Syria and stuff like that, you know, and coupled with the rhetoric of the of the older people in my family, I kind of veered to a more kind of uh, it's quite a short period, but I veered to a kind of more worldview of like, oh, I essentially became slightly more right wing, essentially, but it was only for like this brief period, and which kind of changed basically a year later, where I became where I went down into like the right libertarian kind of strain. I went all over the spectrum, to be honest, as a teen. But yes, there was I kind of became a little bit conspiratorial in my late teens, and there was this video I watched. So a lot of it was right wing nonsense about about how I can't remember the title of the video, but it was some of it was about the Rothschilds controlling the world and stuff like that, and about Illuminati, and about how about like some complex stuff about petrodollars and fiat currency and stuff like that. But in that video it also had some good points. It also had points about why hasn't cannabis been legalized around the world? Why are we seeing vapid levels of inequality? And while it did have a lot of nonsense, there was sort of a grain of truth in that. And a short this is I think this was around 2015. There was a video uploaded by T.J. Cook, amazing atheist of all people, who basically said, it wasn't relevant to me, but it basically just uploaded a video because I was kind of a fan of him at the time, and basically uploaded a video saying, "Don't vote for Hillary Clinton" or something like that. And then I read the comments, and where everyone was talking about Bernie Sanders. And so for the first half of the year of 2016, I was constantly following the development of Bernie Sanders campaign, and I just saw like it kind of resonated with me. He was talking about stuff about inequality and stuff like that. How what I saw in that fickle conspiracy video, and that kind of sent me on the path of becoming more interested, more involved in the political realm. And after that, I started to develop my own ideas. I became more of a social democrat. um, I downloaded. There's this game called Democracy 3 or something like that, where you can essentially control your own state, and it's an icon based game, but it's just you can control your own government and control taxes and programs and stuff like that. It's interesting if you're into that sort of thing, but I've just kind of wandering around that area of the spectrum for a bit, and then I was introduced to some, what were new ideas on the economy for me at the time, which was there was a guy, an economist called Edgar Fagey, I think, and in 2000 he proposed this tax called a automated payment transaction tax, which would effectively tax bilaterally every single transaction in our economy automatically at a very, very low, a ridiculously low percentage, but it would tax everything, so it would be a broad base. And so I kind of made that part of my ideas, and then I started getting into universal basic income and stuff like that, and I wondered what was the logical step. What was the next logical step? So from there, I don't know how I discovered it, but there I always wondered. Not always wondered. I wondered what our world would be like without money, essentially, and so no. It was just this video, that random video that popped up by, I think it was the Free World Charter, and they were and it just said, oh, like what if money were no object and stuff like that, and then I discovered at that point was when I discovered the Venus project. And at first, I was skeptical. I thought, okay, maybe it's a bit too far. I'm holding on to. I still believe that these ideas, these if we massively reform our current system from the way it is now, we can make things work. I was kind of getting into sort of futuristically sort of thought at the time. And I love futurology and thinking about the future and stuff like that. And at first I was skeptical, but the more I found out about it, and the more it was explained to me, through various media, I became more attracted to the idea, and the more and more I thought about it, the more it became sort of logical to me. And yeah, yeah. And I've been a proponent ever since. I mean, I have kind of veered, in and out of the socialist movement. It's kind of been a on and off relationship for me, but I've I feel that I've developed a more mature understanding of my view and the world as it is right now, and my three main sort of values right now are ensuring we live sustainably. That's priority one. Ensuring that we all have our freedom and autonomy and are able to act as we wish and do as we wish and speak as we wish, as long as we're not harming anyone else. And third is to make sure that we all have equal opportunity and equal footing. And our social structures are mainly egalitarian. And I feel that RBEs and other ideas other associated with it, that kind of attracted me to those ideas. Mm. Homogeny, I think it is. Mm. 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 Yeah, yeah. A lot of people get sort of scared away by how the RBE is a it's well it's scientific. It's a design economy. It's not something that organically grows. It's something that's designed with many factors in consideration, and that might seem authoritarian to some people, but the best way to sum it up, I feel, and the way that I've heard others describe it, is an economy and society that is centrally conceived but is decentrally and anarchically organized, once everything's up and running. Mm. Mm. Well, you're kind of doing that by stopping, consumerism, by basically you can grow much of your like own food at home. You can you can purify water from the air. You can you know have solar panels cover your roof and have proper storage solutions and have all of that be your all of that meet your energy needs. You can basically 3D print, you know, a lot of stuff that you can, a lot of parts that you would otherwise need to, buy in a shop or something. And you can, in effect, gradually, not fully right now, I would say, but gradually pull away from the actual system and have kind of a self-contained production and consumption cycle, you know, within your own home, and then you could scale that up to a village or a neighborhood or something like that, and then we could, and then yeah. Yes. Um, in Discord or in YouTube or um, okay. Oh well, I'm just my output volume was lower. No, my output volume, as in what? How is this now? Mm. Um, User settings. Stream. Oh, it's streamer mode. Yeah, streamer mode's enabled. And yeah. Well, yeah, because you're on Discord. Oh, wait. Oh. No, wait. Audio output capture. Okay, try now.
Can anybody hear me? Checking 1, checking 2.
Because I've just added another channel to you. I've just added another source to OBS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if anybody can hear me still. Can you guys hear me, or is it still just Adam that you can hear? Gotta love technical difficulties.
Mm. Okay, so yeah, so all I needed to do was add another audio source into OBS, and then
Okay. All right, well, here I am. Hey guys, glad to finally be heard. Adam was trying to silence me. You know what? The RBE proponent, field is very competitive, apparently. All right, well, now, I mean, things are probably going to make a lot more sense for people. Okay, so to return to where we were, we had pretty much caught up with your introduction to the RBE and then some of your explorations with some of the ideas around it. And then you started your YouTube channel in order to not only communicate the concept of the RBE, but also just to kind of inform yourself more.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Patrick says he's still one-sided, can only hear one voice. If you could tell Patrick to refresh, that might fix the problem.
If you refresh, that might fix the problem.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think
Although
at this point,
the Marlin can still
yeah, Mullen can hear us.
yeah.
Haku, can you also hear me? We're trying to work out some issues with the audio. Apparently, the first 20 something minutes, it was it was just Adam being heard. So hopefully now we've resolved that issue though. Okay, awesome. So refreshing worked for you. Okay, we can move on then.
Yay! So, yeah. This is our first stream. We're just it's just figuring it out. Yeah.
Yep. That is why we are not accepting donations at this time.
The precise reason why.
The precise reason why. I think I don't think Adam is secretly Jacques Fresco's son. I think he's secretly, oh gosh, what's his name? The guy that does this, Isaac Arthur. I think you are secretly Isaac Arthur's, like, son or, like, estranged nephew or something like that. If you had a little bit more of a lisp, I mean, you guys would sound exactly the same. Tell me it isn't true. It's totally true.
Not well, no. I'm. Well, he's not British. He's in Ohio, so.
Okay. So estranged nephew. I mean, there we go. Proven. All right. So to be serious again, though. So you started your channel to educate yourself as well as others. Now you've confided to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I had these ideas in my head, and I just about what kind of world I wanted to create and stuff like that, and so I just needed a great big info dump where I would just dump all of the stuff in my brain in this digital filing cabinet where people could just view it at their own will, and that was kind of the foundation of this idea.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. And you've confided to me recently that you've completed your first series of videos, which was essentially the bedrock of your channel, somewhere to launch from. Do you want to tell us about where you might be going from here in terms of content for your channel?
So I'm going to diversify a little bit, I think. Maybe I wouldn't say become more casual. That's an awful thing to say for a channel of outline nature, but to kind of give some slight appeal to things that are more palatable to the mainstream, like, you know, just maybe offhand do a stream here and there where I play a game or something, and I just talk about my ideas and whatnot, you know, and that will give me kind of a more broad based audience that I can, you know, direct myself to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, obviously for my channel, I diversified kind of into a more controversial area. It's really an arena. It's just a bunch of people taking turns doing debunked and destroyed videos. So, I mean, it's kind of stupid, honestly.
With facts, with undeniable, indisputable facts and logic.
That's what I would like to think, but really it's mostly just misunderstandings of science, and I'm just as guilty as everyone. And right now I'm talking about the whole race realist hypothesis bullshit. So I mean, like, it's a mess. You have a bunch of people who are predominantly, they are not scientists at all, and predominantly, even if they are scientists like me, they're not biologists, they're not geneticists. You have a bunch of essentially quacks trying to pretend to be doctors, talking about these incredibly complex topics as if they are authorities on the matter. And then you have these people who jump in and they see the opportunity to make like thousands and thousands of dollars off of race realists. And so you get people like Jean-François Guérepi, who is a Canadian who, I don't know, tried to do all sorts of terrible things that I don't want to go into. But you get him, who's actually a biologist of some sort, and he just uses misdirection in order to, like, just pander to the alt-right, the far right, and these race realists. And then you have people like me trying to do something to counteract it, but it's like I said, it's a mess.
No, then you have, speaking of pandering, then you have the YouTube classical liberal queen. I don't even need to say his name, but
yeah. So what I would like to do now is give you my story, if it's acceptable.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, so I'm going to start younger than 10, but I'll be very brief with a lot of this. So I was born.
Was it some like Nibiru shit, or was it?
I'll get there. Like I said, I'm going to briefly touch on a lot of things. So at the beginning of the story is in the last millennia. So, you know, which is kind of funny to say, but
yeah.
when I was a wee boy. No, so I was born in Alaska. I am an Alaskan native. I was born in a tiny town that I don't want to name, but it was the middle of nowhere. Most people are very uneducated. And essentially, I was raised, you know, as an indigenous child. I lived half the time in the city and half the time, or small town, and half the time out in the sticks, as we called it. And so I had this really unique experience where I lived a huge chunk of my life without money necessarily being the prime mover, right? Like, money was something that the adults worried about, and honestly, they didn't even talk about it most of the time because we're trying to hunt our own food and grow our own food and, you know, take care of our house and everything. So I grew up not really thinking about money very much. I used to save up change to go like buy books and candy from the store, but that was about the extent of my utility for money. And so I think that really influenced me a lot. Fast forward, I was mostly apolitical until my early 20s. I did the whole Obama thing, and yeah, I voted for him. And then I was subsequently let down by his policies and his inaction. And back then, I thought maybe it was just Obama, but then I quickly realized that's just they, lead you along, and then they rip the carpet out from underneath your feet as soon as it's time to offer up the promises they made to materialize them. And so I was mostly apolitical. When I was 19, I had a conversation with a friend where I told him that we should get rid of money. And I had never heard any ideas at that point about the notion that we could live in a society without money. So this was just my natural conclusion, thinking about the way that the world worked and seeing how futile and redundant most things were. And so I naturally had kind of a skeptical and a holistic or systems thinking sort of perspective from a young age, but I was woefully uneducated. So I believed in Nibiru when I was like 21, 22.
Yeah.
I was confused by all, I could not parse the difference between a conspiracy theory and a legitimate scientific theory. Like, I didn't really know there was a difference. I didn't understand anything really. And so I was introduced, though, at about 21, 22 to the Zeitgeist movie. And what they talked about blew my mind. The part on religion was kind of whatever. I thought it was kind of cool, but I didn't really care. But when they started talking about the problems with the monetary system and everything, it really hooked me in. And so I saw the second one as soon as I could, as soon as it came out. And then they were talking about the resource-based economy. And since then, basically 22, 23, I've been an RBE proponent. It was never something that I was hugely into until the last maybe 5 years or so. But it was something that was kind of on the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that I saw both Addendum and the Venus Project movie, the Paradise or Oblivion movie, I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even know about the Venus Project until like the third movie of the Zeitgeist series, I think. So I didn't really know much, and so my channel I started years ago at this point. It was like, probably 5 years ago when I first started standing in front of my 480p webcam and like awkwardly reciting these scripts and like ideas. And for me at that point, it was mostly, about expanding my knowledge and also communicating something that I felt that more people needed to encounter. And mostly I would just kind of make these videos and then share them with my friends who had never heard of the RBE. And mostly that didn't really get much of a response, but I started to accumulate a following. And about 3 years ago, I started to get very serious about it. I started uploading videos regularly. And after a while of exploring the RBE, I felt like I was yelling into an echo chamber. It's and a lot of people have felt this. You feel like you start to support the RBE, and you can talk to other RBE supporters, but I mean, after a while, it's like once you're not really growing your knowledge exponentially or anything, it starts to get kind of boring, because most people have no idea what you're talking about, and they don't have the energy to really learn about what you're talking about. So it becomes almost futile to talk to a lot of people, which is really unfortunate. But so after a period of being very active, I switched to race realism a couple years ago, predominantly. And my channel now is kind of split between those two topics. debunking race realism and then trying to communicate what the RBE is and going after people for essentially not really understanding what they're talking about. A lot of communicators of the RBE, I found, really have no idea what they're talking about. And so you find a lot of people that are either proponents or they're opposing it, and both of them are spreading these really bad ideas about what any of it is. And so now I haven't done anything with my channel in a while. At this point, going forward, I'm trying to get the motivation to begin to speak about the resource-based and race realism. I need to wrap up what I've done, but I really don't care. I've recognized now that most people simply just don't care about the topic, which I think is good. I think, and all I'm doing by trying to engage these individuals is I'm legitimizing them and I'm giving them more exposure. And I'm not the kind of person that thinks that ideas, are dangerous to spread around, but I do think there's also, unfortunately, a huge chunk of people who have no real understanding of the topic, and I don't think that they need to be exposed to this, because all it does is really confuses them. And it's worse than just confusing them about race. It confuses them about all of science. And so, kind of like how I say that we should focus on autonomizing and liberating smaller communities, and that will kind of steer the system by its testicles, I think we need to do kind of the same thing with this anti-scientific or pseudo-scientific movements, is just try to educate people on what science is, and then they're not going to fall for things like race realism. I think that trying to get out there and educate everybody on this really complex and confusing topic is just beyond what I really have the patience for. So that's kind of my story. That's where I am at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the science denial kind of goes deeper into much more. It kind of has a wider scope than just race realism. It's climate change denial. It's anti-vax. It's conspiracies about GMOs and whatnot.
And things like the JQ. If you don't know what the JQ is, then that's good, because it's so toxic. But yeah, it's really deep. And so I've decided that moving forward, I just want to focus on being more broadly educational and more inspirational, rather than talking about these topics in a clinical way. So that's my ideas. So, did anybody in the audience have any questions? I don't know. Somebody was asking.
We can take a break and we can answer some questions.
Yeah. So, if anybody has any questions about us, then, or not necessarily about us, but about the RBE or anything, let us know. We'll get to you and answer any questions you have. If not, we can go back. I think people were asking questions before that maybe we can return to.
Let me scroll up. Scrolling up, it's mostly just banter.
Yeah. So thank you. That was one question.
Yes. Utopianism. I don't get this a lot from family members, because friends, because I don't really I have my best friend who I try to talk to him about these ideas, and some vague ideas related to it, which are more personal to me. But yeah, it's just something, it doesn't quite get it. I haven't really tried to explain this to many people IRL, because I just feel trying to explain it to someone is just, to be honest, an absolute bitch, because you have to try and get them out of the standard way of thinking, and you have to rely on them to develop very quickly a sense of critical thinking about the world they live in, and that alone is kind of an arduous task. But then to introduce them to something which they might think of as inconceivable, when it's actually fairly possible with our current technology, that's even more difficult. What I do hear a lot of where I do hear a lot of people call us utopians, where I hear that quite a lot, where I hear that quite a lot from, is actually from some members of the left, from Marxists in particular, because of their notion of materialism, which some of them follow quite strictly, and it's even though what they would call the material conditions for this this new system to exist or already here, technology, we have our ideas, that there's we can think of ways to implement them. It's not a gargantuan task to have a test village here and there to kind of give a proof of concept of what we want to achieve. But no, Marxists say no. We don't want to think about the future. That's utopian. That's idealist, that they like to say quite often. And so that's that's why I hear a lot of accusations of utopianism from.
Mm-hmm. To be fair to the communists and socialists, though, utopian is actually a very specific term within socialism or communism. It's kind of it's like the most egalitarian form of communism. It's the most democratic. It's kind of the fullest extent of that philosophy. So when they say that we're utopians, really it's kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, they're trying to say our ideas are impractical. On the other hand, they're trying to say that we're just communists. And so that appropriation, and I've mentioned this before in the past many times, that appropriation is what kills me and really pisses me off about communists. They're very unwilling to accept that there might be alternatives to this political binary that is at the heart of their philosophy between the right and the left. They refuse to really accept that there might be other arrangements, economic and social, which differ from their political ideas. And I've actually had communists tell me, after I pushed back on their assertion that the RBE is utopian, I've had them tell me that, after a barrage of insults, that they feel that everything, literally everything, is political. And so when I say the RBE isn't a political paradigm, they make sure that their net is too big to escape from. So the RBE, in their mind, since everything is political, the RBE is political. It's all part of this political, spectrum that, with communism or socialism on one side and capitalism on the other. So I get really frustrated. I think, speaking to a lot of communists and socialists, I have become just as angry as speaking to some fascists or to some diehard capitalists. I feel that, I mean, and I'm sure that element exists within the RBE movement as well. I haven't encountered it, or at least not very much. But yeah, there's a lot of arrogance there. So sorry for that, but
Yeah.
I really just had to dive in on that one.
But where I find some solace, though, is in that we can actually have some common ground with some anarchists and some communalists. When talking with them on online in chats and whatnot, they seem like, okay, we can have somewhat of an agreement, and we're somewhat on the same page. Anarchists might be a bit wary about, oh, it's a design system. It might slightly it's slightly technocratic, but as a whole, they are much more agreeable, I found.
I'm sorry, which group is more agreeable?
Like anarchists and communalists and
Oh,
people of
yeah,
that
okay.
vein.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mixed bag because some anarchists are communists, and vice versa. So, I mean, it's kind of, I feel in general of the leftist sphere of political ideology, yeah, anarchists are usually more accepting because they also tend to be anti-government, of course. That's why they're anarchists, and so they don't really buy into some of the like ideas that the government-oriented communists and socialists buy into about how things need to go heading forward. I don't know. It's just it's frustrating to me. I just get frustrated and then I kind of seize up a little talking about it because I've had just too many disagreements with people that refuse to even be reasonable. Which, yeah.
I mean, there's even you're very non-violence oriented. There's even a strain of anarchism called anarcho-pacifism, which is basically about it basically focuses on achieving an anarchist process through peaceful means. And they look to people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and people of that vein, and they look at how their respective movements played out, and they kind of draw inspirations from that.
Yeah. Well, so let's see here. We've talked a little bit about our own personal journeys. We've talked a little bit about the distinction between the RBE and some of these other on the surface similar ideologies or arrangements. Let's see here. There was something else that I wanted to respond to. Yeah, it was something Patrick said about Jacques Fresco's "This shit's got to go" speech, and I think ultimately that was what grabbed me too, and gravitated me towards the movement was the appearance of Jacques Fresco. Like I said, I had never heard of him until I saw the third Zeitgeist movie. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. Is I had kind of started gravitating towards the RBE idea as a whole, and then he was the one that really cemented. I I think it's great. I think Jacques Fresco it was a visionary. I think he is. I mean, he isn't perfect, but he was a really great person who, in many ways, I try to model myself after. It's unfortunate that in his older age, reality kind of caught up with him, and it kind of began to force him to kind of play by the rules that exist. You know, he he kind of really was focusing on just his vision. And if you've listened to the interviews with Peter Joseph, and he says that he feels like the Venus Project perceived him as treading on their ground, and that's why they ended the relationship between TZM and TVP. Like, it's really unfortunate that that's what happened to Jacques. I feel like if he had the support, the broader support that he needed, that sort of thing would have never come to really, determine how his last 20 years of life would be. But I don't know. I think there's so much to learn from him and his ideas, and I brought him up a lot in my videos. That's why I really support Travis Grant of the Auravana Project.
Oh, I've
I feel
seen
like
him.
he is so wonderful. I interviewed him actually.
I think I saw that interview. He also has.
Yeah.
He's been quite inactive recently. He does he uploaded his his designs using this game engine that you can't get access to anymore. I don't know why, but yeah, he used Unreal Engine as well, and he basically just created these prefabs, these models, and he was just explaining them in these videos as he was going along. He was doing it in VR as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, and he's a very intelligent person, and more than that, you can be unintelligent even, and as long as you're dedicated and you're diligent and you're honest, and I feel like he has all those qualities. Like, you can be a really groundbreaking person. And I feel like his ideas, his notions, his desire to start a community and everything, I feel like that's kind of just the height of the current range of ideas under the umbrella of the RBE. Like, if people haven't checked out Auravana, the Auravana project, you really should, because it is fascinating, the level of work, and he's got so many different models that will just blow your mind of and I think it's really good. I feel like he needed like an incredible amount of support and help, and unfortunately he couldn't find it. And I wanted to join him at some point, but I was going through school and I have these other commitments, and it's just life really got in the way of being able to try to get something started with him. But I think that if he's still at all active, we should try to get him in on some of these conversations, because I feel that his voice would be really important to be heard. And on that note, I also think that we should try to be much more inclusive of women RBE proponents, and we should try to get some of those voices in here, simply because I feel that unfortunately it's like half of our population doesn't really contribute to anything that's political or related to politics. For the most part, they're not necessarily excluded anymore, but it's just not something that they really express their interest in. And if we can try to be inclusive, that might also really help out our efforts.
Not an RBE proponent. What do you think of AOC? Just offhand.
I think AOC is a criminally overworked and overtaxed person. She's very busy. I think that she has a lot of ideas, some of them better than others. I think she is overall a good person. I think that she's also a product of the system that she's now a player in, though. So she's going to start making some political decisions that people who have purity tests for politicians are not going to like, and she already has been. And so my feelings are she is a good person, but she is, like any other politician, intrinsically limited within the scope of that system.
Yeah. I just I think she will maybe go for a run in either 2028 or somewhere around that time. Maybe if whether it is Trump or Bernie. I mean, Biden's collapsing right now. I believe.
Yeah. It depends. It depends because according to the mainstream narratives, he's still well in the lead and on and on. I think that the types of manipulated statistics mainstream outlets use, they may help him in the short term, but I don't think anything is going to save him from tanking in the near future because, and this happens every time he runs. Like, he's run multiple times in his life.
Yeah.
Every time he comes out the gate and everybody's stacking on the adulation and he has really strong numbers, and then he declines rapidly once people start actually looking into his history, into his policies, into his perspectives on the world. So I don't think that he's going to be winning.
Yeah, I mean, what in terms of as social democrats go, you've got a good few in there. You have Bernie, you have Warren, you have Yang, and then the rest are just centristy, establishmenty people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all skewed towards supporting the current system, which I mean, kind of. I think there's some elements that are pulling different ways, but I think that ultimately, like Peter Joseph has said in the past, ultimately, all of these political movements are going to be ineffectual. The solution is not through the politics of the current system. The solution is to change the nature of the game. Now, unfortunately, Peter Joseph has begun to spread more rhetoric, I feel, that is in line with communism and socialism. Like, he talks more about, well, he expresses more anger and frustration now, and he's talked about revolution and stuff in the past. And I understand his position, and I respect it to the extent that I think that it is one possible solution, in air quotes. But I personally feel that revolution, any sort of violent or disruptive changing of the system, is going to backfire horribly because the world is really in this place right now where it is really important that we don't tip the balance one way or the other. And I feel like my ideas about liberating smaller communities, and once you start doing that, it'll catch on like wildfire. That changes the name of the game. That removes, like I said, once you are getting free energy, you're getting free water, you're getting free food. Once people are liberated in that way, they don't have to cater to big business. They don't have to cater to these developments or these pressures to develop. They don't have to cater to this materialistic lifestyle anymore. And most people are frustrated. They're upset with the materialistic lifestyle. They kind of do, they contribute and they to it because they're kind of bored and they're stuck. And I think that if you gave people a different option, then things would change quickly. And that's my idea. And I'm still working on drafting up some documents. I really want to do some sort of international organization to pool together large amounts of resources and, nonprofit resources and activist resources, and to start liberating communities, because literally do today.
An idea I had just that I kind of had for a while is a business, but basically imagine a access-based business where it's no, it has to work within the monetary system. So there's like charges and whatnot. But imagine basically a service where you pay so much every month, and you have all of your utility needs, all of your transport needs and whatnot, all covered. And it's marketed as a holistic access service, and it kind of gets people um, more acclimatized to the idea of access rather than ownership.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think, again, raising awareness of the possibilities that we have available to us, the potentials that we have ahead of us and today, I think that it will really be game changers. I don't like to focus on negatives, and that's why I have a lot of problems with where most of the movements around the RBE are going today. I feel like a lot of people who were RBE proponents are now communists and socialists, or they've returned to those ideologies because they see the RBE as completely ineffectual. And I have to admit that the current movement is entirely ineffectual. But again, I have some ideas about how I want to reinvigorate it. And I think that what you just said about raising awareness about access and everything is an important component of that.
Yes, and if this business is successful, any returns from it, could be any profits could be used to go towards all different kinds of projects, whether it be a test village, whether it be incorporating some of these ideas into existing communities in order to get people more adjusted, or things of that vein. And maybe eventually we could work our way up to actually building at like a first proper city system.
Yeah. Well, and there are avenues for doing that. There, I went to school for city planning, and I feel like I feel like there is so much potential to guide this country and this world, our global civilizations forward. I think all of these different places have the potential to move forward towards building these very sustainable, enduring
Yes.
city systems. And really what they are is they're city systems. I think
Yes.
that's kind of I think that's kind of the transition to the RBE. It's to alter what we already have, these cities, and turn them into systems. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's a really good distinction. I don't
So
know, but
yeah, so that kind of because we was talking about Travis Grant earlier, that kind of maybe this kind of gives a convenient segue into something I've wanted to talk about, which is designs. Just let's talk. Uh,
yes,
yes,
let's do it.
let's geek out. That's
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
I
So you've been you have knowledge or experience about city planning. What do you think about the ideas I presented in my last installment?
So I think that a lot of them are thankfully already being utilized. So uh, if you look into some of the redevelopment occurring in Canada right now, I think in the British Columbia, um, you'll find that there are some really great integrations that are occurring where they're trying to focus now on these. highly efficient public transportation systems. They're trying to incorporate more open space. They're trying to make the layout of these cities more intuitive, more easy to navigate, and less of just, to be blunt, a clusterfuck. It's what they've kind of turned into, because city planning decades ago wasn't really planning as much as it was just approving things and trying to at least make the city stay functional. And now it's much more stringent in the rules that they set for transportation. And are you familiar with NEPA, or environmental law, like environmental protection laws?
Not really, no.
Okay. So, and that's ultimately the biggest thing that you have to learn about when you're becoming a planner, is these environmental protection laws. And so have you heard of an EIS, an environmental impact statement?
Oh yeah, like the one that was carried out. I
Well,
I followed the whole no dapple movement on YouTube and stuff like that. Do you remember the
it's
current
an environmental impact report, but sorry.
the environmental impact report of the Dakota Access Pipeline? I think it was.
Hmm.
And they basically said no, but the corporation that wanted to build the pipeline said no, we're going to continue anyway, even though it was in a even though it was
There were serious problems.
even though it was near a military base, I think.
Hmm. It was going to go like right underneath it, I think, or something, like right through part of it. Yeah. So the environmental impact report is essentially a way of analyzing these different categories of resources, such as transportation, and I mean, this is my job, so I should know more, but I'm blanking right now. But endangered species, water, aquatic resources, soils. Like, you can have all sorts of different resource categories, but there's like a set number, like nine or something, that are predominantly what people consider in drafting these reports. And this is what kind of steers, at least in the United States, and I think in most of the developed nations right now, they kind of have the same sort of setup. This guides the development of our cities. And so they're assessing these resource categories, and they're trying to measure the impacts, measured against, in many cases, the benefits. But ultimately, it comes down to, will there be impacts? Um, and 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 then they try to mitigate, or they try to avoid or minimize these impacts. And that's essentially a very truncated uh, overview of the process. And that's what is really, uh, in many instances, running how city planning and everything happens in this world today. Now, the problem with it, I feel, is that, like, they do have discussions on cumulative effects and everything, but in terms of larger systems thinking, they still haven't incorporated that. And I think that it's really good that in Canada right now, they are beginning to integrate that systems thinking into their planning process. And some of the things that you brought up in your video is what they're moving towards, is they want to have these cities where, it's more or less fully sustainable and autonomous. And they're a long ways out, because they have to plan everything around the current economic paradigm. But we are moving in that direction. And like I said, I think we can expedite that by planning out these city systems and making those the norm. So I'm much more constructive oriented. Like, I don't want to rebel against the current system. Like I said, I don't think we need to. I think we can grab it by the balls and lead it to where we need to.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of my perspective. With city planning, I think that I keep on saying this, but to sum it up, yes, I do think that the kinds of things that you were touching on in your last video is precisely where we're already heading. It's just that we're not heading there faster than we're heading off the edge of the cliff, of climate change and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and if we transitioned into RBE and I mean things of that vein, well, it would be a lot more accelerated.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Yeah. In terms of the actual city systems themselves, I mean, we can talk about this for ages. It's one of the things that takes up so much land in a city is roads. If you made a city completely walkable and cyclable and whatnot, or if you made it use like highly efficient like public transit systems, and you didn't need roads or very few roads, you could just save so much land. And with no roads, you can make your city basically a lot more vertical as well. You can use, as I said in my video, you can use a lot more vertical real estate, and you can build your cities up that way as well.
Yeah, build up instead of out, and try to make more efficient use of the space that you have available. I think that's definitely going to have to be part of what we're doing. The issue with that is that people are still stuck under the notion of having private property and everything, which is becoming absurd in in terms of owning a house and a yard and everything is becoming absurd in a lot of places. In America, that's probably never going to be an issue because there's a lot of land. But in certain other places, like in Europe and everything, like the notion that you're going to grow up and by the time you're like 30 you're going to own your own piece of property, or at least be paying on it and doing well in all these other ways, is probably not very realistic. Just like the United States, most people are renting their entire life now.
I mean, in my video, I talk about how you might not be able to have Australia as your backyard, but you could have a place that's very, very flexible to your needs and wants. And we can try to accommodate as many of people's preferences as possible. I think that's something we should strive for, but while still doing it in a kind of a standardized and sustainable way.
Yeah, so, and access is the answer to that. So
yes, and making things customizable and whatnot. It's just normal people would be able to enjoy benefits that the richest of us enjoy today. You could move every week if you wanted to somewhere across the world and live there, and then just move somewhere else, and you could be completely nomadic if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All right. Well, 1 second. Thank you for coming, Malin. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Mr. Stevenson. Take care. We'll answer those questions in the future, and hopefully you get the opportunity to come back and revisit our answers. So
yes, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in.
And yeah, now I've spaced on what we were talking. Oh yes, like you could even live sort of a nomadic lifestyle. So having an access society, I think a lot of people think that if you don't own anything, then you would have no sense of permanence, no place to call your own, no place to stay, and that's completely absurd. Because the thing about access, is that
everywhere is your home. Basically, it's like
and if you would like to stay in one place in order to raise a family, completely acceptable. Those would be prioritized desires, right? Because people that are traveling around to do different work in different places, they're already experiencing so many marvelous things around the world. If you want to stay in one place and raise a family, I think that there's obviously more than enough space to accommodate everybody to stay in one place. Now, would that be a ranch and everybody that wants to stay in an area gets a ranch? Probably not. But you would have to be realistic and consider the what is sustainable for an area. Space, natural resources, sustainable levels of resource consumption and utilization. All of these things would factor in, but access is much better than what we currently have right now. Like with under an access system, there would be nobody homeless.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the technological solutions I talked about in the installment kind of embrace that.
Yeah, yeah. So let's answer Mr. Stevenson's questions. I had a couple here. The first one is, my family had horrible experiences with cults, political cults in particular. This fueled my interest in science. What can we do to confront concerns about the zeitgeist movement and other movements? I guess that was the second question. But...
Yeah. Okay. So can I just interject and say something? Talk about something relevant here. So. Yeah. Do you know the YouTuber Etika? I think it is.
Can't say that I do.
No, it's basically like this gamer streamer person who got involved with who got involved with this New York City cult called the Venus Project Foundation.
Oh,
so, and a lot of people have conflated this Venus Project Foundation, which is indeed a cult, with the Venus Project, and there's been this miscommunicated conflation between the two, essentially.
Yeah. Yes, and that's kind of the problem with starting these different organizations and groups, is that no matter what, you're going to end up with people, if they can find a way to take advantage of a term or a name, a title for something, they're going to. I mean, we've seen that definitely in the past. I mean, religion is like the prime example of that. Like Mormonism is like such a good example of somebody looking at an existing institution with a definitive name and then just appropriating it in order to make themselves fantastically wealthy and privileged during their time here. So it doesn't surprise me that a cult has sprung up that sounds very similar. I think that we should just promote the ideas and the concepts and probably, I mean, foundations, I guess, are a necessary evil at this point, because we need these entities in order to be disseminating this information.
Yeah, I agree.
Can't all just be individual activists. At some point, there has to be some sort of database or something.
Yeah, I just having trouble kind of finding anyone near me who would be in agreement with my ideas and trying to work with me on them.
Yeah. Oh, well, to return to this question, though, what can we do to comfort or confront concerns about the zeitgeist movement and other movements? Well, personally, I think that we have to focus on the concept and the logic behind the resource-based economy, and we're going to have to kind of feed these movements to the wolves a little bit. These movements have some issues attached to them, like the zeitgeist movement in particular. was riddled with conspiracy theories, riddled with them. It was like you could not go to a convention without tripping over dozens of conspiracy theories about things. And the videos, the videos that the movement spawned from are riddled with conspiracy theories and all these, honestly, sometimes kind of crazy ideas. And wasn't necessarily Peter Joseph's intent to propagate them, but that's kind of what happened. So
I believe
yeah,
he uses his performance piece excuse these days.
It's such a lame excuse. He should just say that I didn't really know what the fuck I was talking about, and now I do. But so to answer that question directly, what we should do is we should focus upon the people and not the movement, right? Be like, okay, well, there's some elements, of every movement that are unfortunately infatuated with ideas which are more speculative, is the polite way to say it, than others. But really, we want to focus on what the concept is of the RBE. We want to focus on the individual members and assess them not as members of a group, but as individuals, because that's kind of what the RBE is. It's a collection of individuals. It's not a bunch of just ideologues. And so we need to draw that distinction that they aren't unified, ideologically charged members of these organizations. They are individuals with a variety of ideas and conceptualizations, about these ideas. Other than that, though, like I said, we're going to have to probably feed these organizations to the wolves at some point and start anew, because I don't think that you can break the ties between conspiracy theories and ideas about revolution and the zeitgeist movement, especially when we still have Peter Joseph talking about revolution and saying crazy stuff on Twitter.
Yeah. Although there is kind of an evolution that's happened with the RBE movement more recently, over the past few years. It's become a little less about just the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement, and there's lots of tiny organizations popping up all over the place. You have Oravana, you have Copiosis, you have all the Free World Charter, Free World One, all of these different micro organizations that are essentially striving for the same goal. But it's so the actual movement has become a bit more decentralized. Maybe suffered a loss in the process, but it has become a lot more decentralized. It's not just about the Zeitgeist movement anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank goodness for that. I think it's good to be moving away from. I mean, I hate to say that, because I think that the Zeitgeist movement is filled with a lot of wonderful people that are still doing a lot of good. I just think that it's pretty tarnished, and it's a pretty loaded term. Like I've met people who don't even know what the RBE is, and they hear the Zeitgeist movement, and yeah, they immediately have some bad ideas about it. Like, isn't that the people who believe that like the government is responsible for 9/11 and it was a false flag, and isn't that an Alex Jones like position? So like there's so much mis and disinformation about the group simply because of its past, and I don't think that we're going to get beyond that, especially nowadays when most people don't even know what it is. And I mean, all it would take to discredit the group is to just show off some of the things that their members have said or done in the past, and to show like some of the things that were talked about in the original Zeitgeist movie itself. But like I said, there are many members that are doing a lot of good. They're wonderful people. I don't think that I don't think they're on a sinking ship. I just don't think the ship is going anywhere.
Yeah. Moving on to talking about the RBE itself. I've been thinking a lot recently, and I think that when we're talking about an entirely new social order, essentially, I feel the term like resource-based economy is kind of it's kind of restricting in a way. Not in terms of talking about when talking about economics. When talking about economics, it's fine, because it's all about resources and efficiency and sustainability and whatnot. But when you're talking about more cultural, more societal, more superstructural issues such as culture, education, and whatnot, I feel we're talking about in an RBE education would be like this. Well, you're referring to a society, but you're calling it an economy, so it's not that really that all encompassing, and so I've been kind of thinking about ideas that can kind of accompany RBEs in a way. So there's a concept known as sociality within the animal kingdom, which is basically, essentially what it is the behavior that's observed where different species will essentially cooperate with each other in social ways in order to survive. That's sociality, and we can apply this to our society. So we can say, okay, we're taking care of our own, and we want to pursue a society that values social connection and egalitarian social ties, regardless of identity and persuasion and whatnot. And and then we come to culture. Now, when we're talking about culture, well, I don't know about you or anyone else. I assume you're on a similar frequency to me, but when we're talking about culture, I think about I want to be able to choose how I live my life. I want to be able to choose my own lifestyle. I want autonomy. We should value in our culture. We should value liberty and expression and things of that vein. And so like with minimal interference, and so all of these things kind of make up. So we all these things that we have to consider that may not necessarily be part of economics, which is what the RBE is about. But there's also all these different all these other elements which calling them part of an RBE doesn't really fit necessarily, because RBE is economy, it's economics, and there's yeah.
I think, once again, to bring up Travis Grant, I think that like one of his greater contributions was just that he talks a lot about community, and he focuses so much on this concept of community, which the economy is an integral part of the functioning of the community. And so I think it's such a good distinction and such a good idea, that I think that, yeah, the RBE, like you were saying, it's confusing. It's more confusing because resource-based economies are what the entire world uses right now. Like, the definition of capitalism is that it's a resource-based economy. So, I mean, I've talked to libertarians before and been like, oh, I'm a proponent of the resource-based economy. And they're like, okay, like everybody is, like, so, I think that there's this confusion that needs to be addressed. There's also the fact that, as you were expressing, like, it doesn't really cover all the bases of what this concept is. And I think that what Travis Grant has done with his idea of community is really unified a lot of the ideas and concepts that are running underneath the surface. And I think that it's really cool. That's what I would recommend calling it, is just community. It's the focus on community, communion.
Yeah, I've been kind of floating around the idea of what I call essentially natural order. In the natural order of economics, there is no money, there is no private property. You don't see, dolphins or whatnot trading for things. You don't, as ridiculous as it sounds. The same for society. Sure, you have a lot of competitive, hierarchical species, but also a lot of species are, such as bonobos. They are very cooperative, much more egalitarian, much like how we were in Paleolithic times. And that was kind of a natural order of things. Do I think we should abandon all technology and live in teepees? No, but I think that can be a model, an inspiration for a social structure to pursue. And in terms of culture and whatnot, I think that there's a lot of arbitrary standards. I see a lot of art things that are arbitrary into things like what you can say and what you can't say. I have a lot of qualms with modern appearance standards and what not. I don't personally care much about how society views how someone looks and stuff like that. We're so critical of like people's like how people look. I hate kind of the modern idea of beauty, essentially, because it's so cookie cutter and in my opinion, to be frank, so artificial. I'm going on a tangent, but do you kind of
well no I think it relates because our society is fundamentally materialist, and so I think that obsession with youth, the obsession with look, appearance, all of these things, a part of it is completely natural, right? Like, we respond from a very young age to more attractive people in different ways than we respond to less attractive people, and those are subjective perspectives, right? But I mean, yeah, there's no denying that the current paradigm emphasizes so strenuously the focus upon surface level looks, features, etc. I think we could do a lot, just like abandoning this materialistically focused society. I think would probably change a lot of the ways that people perceive and value each other. Because right now, value is like so so warped by whether or not circumstances are favorable, usually determined by whether or not economics is acceptable for, like I've almost dated people in the past where it turned into not happening simply because we had to go two different directions, right? And that to me is really kind of a travesty, that at certain points you just have to choose between, well, I mean, sometimes you don't even have the choice. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so drawn to movements like, just like body positive movements and similar strains. Because I just see it as, them as a path to people becoming, more confident, just how they are. Without any arbitrary social standards being pushed upon them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that now it's been about 2 hours. So I think that it's probably a decent place to end the video. I feel like there's a lot more, obviously, that we could talk about, but I feel that I'm kind of waning a little bit. Waxing,
Yeah.
waning. I'm going one way or the other. And I feel that next time, though, it would be really cool if we could talk about something that a lot of people have questions on, and that is criminality. What would a criminal like element? How would that be addressed? How would the system be formed in order to address these issues? And I think that in the next episode, hopefully, we have more people joining us. But if not, we should definitely discuss this topic, because it causes a lot of confusion for people who support the RBE. They really don't understand how we would actually address this. So, yeah, we should definitely do that.
And I have quite an interesting perspective on this. I mean, I'm
well.
Yeah.
I was saying let's save it for next time. If you want to preview it, that would be fine.
Yeah, sure. So I basically advocate a solutions-based approach, as opposed to how we currently do things, locking people up in cages when they need a helping hand and not an iron fist. Basically, I think that we need. I think that a lot of criminality is to do with contradictions in our society, and part of solving this isn't, to, punish people as such, but to deal with their problems and to deal with different contradictions between different groups of people. I think society is kind of a great big jigsaw puzzle, and we just have to kind of figure out ways to make things, click. And we have to solve contradictions. We have to create long-term solutions that will, ensure that something like that a particular act doesn't happen anymore, or is no longer a problem.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yeah, for these enduring social issues, there's gonna have to be enduring solutions. I think that's exactly right. I think I'm pretty much on the same page. I think when we reconvene in the future, we should talk about sociopaths, psychopaths, elements that are atypical, and not just caused by need and desperation. But I think that's a pretty good summation and preview of what we can go over in the future.
Yes.
So I have been Nathaniel, RBEmpathy.
I have been Adam Jones.
Numero uno. As I talk over you, sorry.
I've been Adam, and this has been our first stream. We've been very newbie at this, but it's been a learning experience. It really has.
Yeah. And I think next time we can focus on like having more of a structured conversation. We can at least just draw up some notes and then touch on some things, and then
Yeah.
you know just to make it more cohesive and coherent. But I think that this was actually a really good introduction. I think that we addressed a lot of topics very well. So cool.
And if there's more people, it might. I can just change the number from 2 proponents to like 3 or 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
Travails of 10 proponents. That would be a mad stream, but
that would be a cool stream. I think that sort of group conversation is something that's rarely had online. I think that might actually be fun to play with. I don't know.
It would just be people talking over each other every 10 seconds. But
yeah, we could have a digital like stick that you have to hold in order to, could do something, churns or something. But anyway, at any rate, we'll figure it out, and hopefully we get the opportunity to try to figure out those sorts of problems.
Yeah. Anyway, my throat's getting dry from all this talking.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Adam, for having me on, and I look forward to next time.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I'll catch you and all of the audience, all of the 3 viewers that are watching right now later.
Yep. All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Peace.